I'd like to entertain people a little bit. We do want to welcome Beth, but she's been sitting quietly. I will welcome you officially, but I'm just trying to see if I can get this live stream working.
Yeah, that's no problem. Let me just say a quick hello to everybody. So I was invited to join you all. So we probably started talking about doing this session about 2 months ago. So it's been a long time coming. And I'm just entering the conversation with curiosity around what might come up. We've scoped a session around the impact of technology in society and the environment, but also talking about the role of diversity in sustainability and sustainability careers for what we've assumed is going to be a largely female audience, although obviously everybody is welcome. If there are any questions you'd like to ask me, I'm very open, so please do throw the odd question into the chat and maybe we can field them as we go through. Wonderful to see where everyone is from.
Yeah. Got a few new names that I haven't had on any of the calls before. I do know a few of these faces though. But I didn't know Sophia from Rotterdam, and I don't know if... Have we met Maria Siddiqui?
No, we haven't. I think you popped up on my LinkedIn because of this event, because I'm connected with Beth, but I'm glad to be here and connect with everybody.
Yeah, and did you say you're in Perth? No.
No, I'm in London.
London, that's what you said, sorry. See how quickly I forget. So many things, so many loose parts here. Okay. That's a great idea. I'm also... I'm going to just pop a couple of things in the chat as well. So we'll probably repost these ones. I'm posting there's a few links there. So one is for, Beth supports, and she's on the board, I think, of Save the Children, right? So we've not charged for this, but Beth usually charges a ginormous amount, I'm sure, to everybody to all these fantastic conferences and summits she goes to, but she's come here to join us, which is amazing. But if you want to contribute, I've put the donate link in the chat for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. There's no pressure for anyone to donate, but I do sit on the board of I'm actually the board chair. I should own my role, right? So I'm on the board chair of the corporate advisory board for Save the Children, which is the entity that helps strengthen the connection between business and the third sector for Save the Children. Hopefully that link works for all of you. It's quite a clever link. It's supposed to route to wherever your IP address is in the world so that you can donate in your own currency and for whatever kind of tax benefit or gift aid there might be in donating, which I think is very clever. So yeah, please do consider that just as a thank you for those of us donating our time and effort to this conversation.
And I think, what was I going to say? Well, the other links there are more about the information about It Girls Rock and things like that. So there's Kate and everybody. All right. So I think we'll get started. I have not successfully managed to go live on the live stream, but there is a link in that one to do it, and we are recording, so hopefully we will be able to do that. So before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of land across everywhere where we live. Now I'm coming to you from Walyalup or Fremantle in Western Australia, which is has been looked after by the Wajik people of the Noongar Nation for well over 60,000 years, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I always do a massive shout out to the women of First Nations people and their yarning circles, because we take a lot of inspiration for that in It Girls Rock, because it's about supporting each other and uplifting and elevating women, because if we do, we can also then help the rest of the world. I'm sure Beth will say something about that because I've seen her say it in a different talk. The other thing that I always like to do is to shine a light on the fact that we all come from very diverse and different cultures. Like we've got today we've got Rotterdam, we've got London, we've got Perth, we've got New Zealand. We've got a few different places. I'm not sure where everywhere is. Where everywhere is. I do know where everywhere is because geography was my favorite subject, but I don't know where everyone is from. So but it's important. And when we set up It Girls Rock, it was super, super important for us to create a psychologically safe and inclusive culture where people join. So It Girls Rock is an online community with a global mission and vision of supporting each other and creating a connected world where we celebrate differences and we shake IT or shake it up for good, have a bit of a boogie, right? So that's one of the things behind It Girls Rock. So we make space for everybody to have a voice and to ask questions and speak in the community. The other thing about It Girls Rock is that I wanted to create this community, and I started it a while back, and then I kind of went away a little bit, and then I'm coming back, and we're coming back for full. And the vision is really to create a collective of IT savvy women that can take on projects for industry. So if anybody knows about a project that's not core to the business, a tech project, it could be data, AI. So I better please throw it my way, and I'll have a chat with them and see if we can actually support them and augment the teams, because that way women actually get experience working on real life projects, and the employers will get the opportunity to see how they work, and in that way we get trained people that actually are seen by industry from anywhere in the world. That's my vision. Not there yet, but by the end of the year, definitely. But it was also about involving and engaging women in the creation of tech, so that we can ensure that we have ethical and meaningful application of technology, and specifically now in this day and age when you know, everything's developing super, super fast. And I guess you know, most people, a lot of people kind of feel like AI is new. AI has been around for a long, long time, and it's been running our lives for a very long time. But we haven't seen it as much as we have now. It's not been accessible to us, so it's kind of exploded because we think ChatGPT is all of AI. But if we don't take care, and if we don't become good parents to AI, then it might go in the wrong direction. So it's up to us to drive that, and I think women are much better posed to do that than men. Sorry there are a few men who've said that they were coming today, but I can't see them yet, so I can just bag them a little bit now. No. Just kidding. Anyway, so before we dive into so we will just ask questions along the way. We're not going to have a Q&A at the end. Just keep asking questions. We'll just have a conversation about this. I'm going to try to spotlight Beth and myself in a minute. Maybe I'll just spotlight Beth while I'm talking about her. How does that work? Oh no. Spotlight for everyone. Look at that. I've got Beth in the middle, and I can put myself on. So I'm going to read this because it's so much. So Beth is a distinguished social impact and sustainability strategist, and she was honored with the Great British, I've forgotten to put great every time I've talked about it, the Great British Businesswoman Award in 2022. And she's got over 15 years of experience. She has been she has excelled at guiding global companies towards becoming purpose-led organizations. And as a working mother, she's passionate about equal rights, diversity, and climate change. And she leverages her expertise to drive meaningful change. So welcome, Beth. Welcome to this amazing group of women. Minu is here to help us. If you guys get lost or want to have a question, please ask. Oh, look, Anastasia's got a possible project. Look at that. We like it. We like it. So I'm just going to add spotlight to myself. This is more for the recording. My LinkedIn Live didn't work here. So without further ado, now we're ahead of time, which I really love, because we'll always be out of time at the end. Will anybody who's been part of this before knows that happens to me. But I'd like you to throw it over to you, Beth, and ask you to share a little bit about your background, what you actually do, and why you ended up doing it, and maybe if you have a specific sort of feminine strength, that AKA soft skill, that or multiple that brought it to where you are, that would be cool as well, because I always make people share that.
Yeah, happy to share. So I'm at a stage in my career now where I have what's termed a portfolio career. So I'm working as a sustainability advisor and coach. So a combination of work. I'm with the University of Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, which is sponsored by King Charles, something he's been involved in for a very long time. And I teach there on executive education programs around sustainability. As Gry said, I'm the board chair for Save the Children's Corporate Advisory Board, which is really looking at the role of corporations in development aid and humanitarian aid. I sit on the British Tourist Authority Board, so specifically with a view to what it means to be a prosperous Britain, and the sustainable tourism aspect of that I'm particularly passionate about. And then beyond that, I've got various things I do. You might have seen some of the speeches I have. I've got one online on YouTube that I did last year at Westminster, talking about women's leadership, sharing a bit of my career journey on there. So please do you check that out. And I've been over 15 years of my career really working at the intersection of technology, sustainability, and I define that as both social and environmental impact work. And then using the impact of business as a force for good in the world. So most of my roles have been with large multinationals. I've started off my career at Accenture through to Ernst & Young, EY, working with a collection of clients there, both in a consultancy and an in-house capacity. And then I've spent the last 4 years of my career at Amazon, where I was initially hired to help with the UK businesses' COVID-19 pandemic relief, and a very impactful program called Amazon Future Engineer, which looks at the role of technology skills and developing those technology skills with a view that technology has a positive impact on us having more sustainable livelihoods, etc. And then in my last year there, I led the global humanitarian aid work for Ukraine, for the Ukraine war. And all up, Amazon contributed over $100 million in response to that effort. And it was very much an all-consuming role. I took my work home with me very much, as I'm sure you can imagine. So that's a little bit about my work life. At home, so I'm a mother of two. I have an 8-year-old girl and a 4-year-old son. We have an extended family because we have a Ukraine refugee family that live with us. So for over 18 months now, we've been what's called a hosting family in the UK, with refugees living with us intermittently. Europe had its largest influx of refugees in our history. 2.5 million Ukrainians moving into Europe in a very short period of time, a matter of months. And so the government responded with a call out to citizens to host refugees within their own home. And that's what I've been doing. And I'm a real strong believer in the power of diversity of thought in all its guises, in building and strengthening business as a force for good. So however we identify as the mosaic of humans we are, our wonderful intersectional selves, I try and bring the best of myself to my work. Yeah, a little bit about me.
That's wonderful. And did you answer about your feminine strengths? Did you have any feminine strengths that made you go down this?
Oh gosh,
Sure, you have
I'm
loads.
blushing now. It's always difficult to answer that question. I had an interview yesterday for an academic research project on women in sustainability, and they asked me that same question. And what's interesting is that massive generalization, but women tend to be more adept at systemic thinking. So holding matrix complexity, and you can argue that's because we are carers both in an office environment and a home environment. There's many reasons why women are more adept at matrix thinking and systems thinking compared to men who more typically are linear in how they approach change. And so I think that is something that we typically see around women working in sustainability. Also, I sometimes describe myself as a polymath. And what I mean by that is I have very diversified skills. I find that I'm very strong on data. I can be very analytical. I'm also a direct communicator, but I would say I'm graciously bold in how I communicate, set ambition around change, and hopefully I endeavour to be an inclusive leader and take people with me, because I think when you're working in social and environmental impact, you're only as good as the impact that you leave behind you. And so in every job I've taken and every role I've had, I've tried very hard to live my values, but also empower others to really not just deliver the work, but understand it so that they can take it forward beyond a specific kind of deliverable or product that we might be developing at any given time.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I agree. These are some of the skills that are absolutely essential and the capital for the world moving forward. So you said polymath, but I want to ask you about the polycrisis that you talk about, because I hadn't come across the expression before, so I just had to double check that I understood it. And I think you speak of how we're facing much bigger challenges as change makers now. So I wanted to see if you could share a little bit on that with us.
Yeah, so there are 3 terms that are becoming increasingly popular in people that are working in this space. One is polycrisis, one is permacrisis, and then the third is wicked problems, right? So more than any generation before us, our generation is faced with significant challenges across multiple polarities of our life. So in a work environment, it's the sustainability challenges around how businesses can think about their value chains and the impacts of their value chains. And in Europe, there is a lot of regulation. It's becoming one of the most heavily kind of regulated parts of the world around sustainability in business. At home, there is cost of living crisis. There is, for all of us, rising inequality in the world. So 5 years ago, before the pandemic, social mobility was improving. We were starting to see better metrics on things like the Gini index, the gender equality index, etc. These patterns are now reversing. And from a technology lens, we talk about fourth industrial revolution and the role of technology in that and in accelerating that. But really coming back to climate change and the impact that that is having on polycrisis. Generations before us have dealt with things like inequality, etc. Whether we've done a good enough job of it, I would probably argue no, and there's always work to do there. But when you layer in what's happening ultimately to the air we breathe, the water we need, the raw materials that we require, they are not all encompassing. They are finite, and we are overshooting our ability to create sustainable livelihoods, not just for future generations. So the Brundtland report, which was a famous report that coined the term sustainable development, talked a lot about future generations and our responsibility to future generations. And actually, what we're seeing now is that the science-based estimates around when we would overshoot a sustainable planet were too kind, and actually it's our generation ultimately that is going to be the generation that needs to fix this stuff. And so the accountability is now, not tomorrow, which is why I am very much a strong believer in putting my effort and energy on that. And the minute that I feel like I'm not in the right place with my skills, or I'm not maximizing my impact to address what I think is the challenge of our time, without being too dramatic about it, I move and I change, and I try and refocus where my attention is.
Whoa, gotta let that sink a little bit in there. Yeah, it's just you look around and you go, okay, well, we're still doing all these different things, and you don't. What is the truth? How do you know what the truth is? How do you actually? I'm going totally off script, by the way, but how do you actually navigate the landscape of sustainability and saving the planet and saving the universe? I don't know, because we're putting so much scrap out there in the universe. Is that not going to impact us as well, sort of thing, So I guess, how do you what's it called? How do you separate the chaff from the wheat? Is that the right expression?
So it's really complicated, and you'll also see that some people suffer from things like eco-anxiety. There's a real danger that you become educated in this space, you really understand and get to grips with what we're talking about here with regards to the environment and social equality, and it feels overwhelming, and you can get lost in that. And then what you see is some people opting out. You see people just focusing down on themselves or their own communities, and it's a very difficult thing to say centered in the work, and I'm constantly trying hard to make sure that I don't slide into deficit mindset. I'd like to say that I'm a very positive person. I do feel like we can make a difference here, and we can affect change in this. I believe that technology is an accelerator to help us. I don't believe it's the answer, but I believe it's a tool. And I think it's important that those of us that have the skills to work in and with technology are harnessing that as a force for good. And I think that anyone that works in technology knows that if you frame it as a product and a tool, then it's only ever as good as the designer and the humans that sit behind it. So thinking about that, and thinking about the need for designers of a future world, communities like this one that you've created are important, because we need to help and support those that want to use their skills for good in this world.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, there's designers, but it's not designers in the way it used to be designers in the old days. It's actually about designing our whole world, if you like, our living environments and everything like that, but using technology, so the technology becomes an enabler, right?
Yeah, very much. So you've got some people that are working in the space sector, interesting to see that it's a lot of very rich male entrepreneurs that are building rockets, some of which are phallus-shaped rockets, so we can read into that what we need. But they're off looking for new resources outside of the Earth, working to a strategy that we might need space stations at some point. And that might seem eccentric, but it's also not crazy, I would say. And I think that there's a valuable approach to that. At Amazon, there's a very interesting piece of work called Project Kuiper, which is all around creating an internet infrastructure globally that may provide free internet around the world. And if you think about, for those of you that are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is quite a famous pyramid, it talks about the basic needs we have as humanity. And there's been an ongoing debate around whether connection to the internet should be part of that hierarchy of needs for humanity, because the role that the Internet of Things has in access to education, access to banking, ability to create social mobility opportunities for people and individuals. So the gift of digital and what that means for people to define their destinies is quite impactful. And then there's another way of looking at this, which is how people approach the utilization of technology itself. So you may have seen off the back of things like recent COPs that a lot of national governments have come out and they've made commitments to net zero or to investing in renewable energies and solar power, wind turbines, hydropower, etc. It's all really important to get us off fossil fuels. But at the same time, these technologies have dependencies on raw materials and supply chains, which some of those resources are also finite. And so then you get into really difficult, niggly problems and conversations around things like cobalt. We need cobalt for batteries. I think it's something like 80% of cobalt in the world comes from the DRC. And anybody that's been to a mine in the DRC will know that there's a lot of issues around human rights, child labour in mining of cobalt. And there's dependencies on electric energy and how we use batteries, etc., where cobalt is critical. So you can really tie yourselves in knots with these things. And I think it's good that those who study technology also have an element of the philosopher about them. And you see this in artificial intelligence education, right? You also learn philosophy, you learn psychology, you learn how to hold the ethical questions alongside the utilization of this technology. And it takes some mental gymnastics, I think, sometimes to make sure that we are doing the right things and holding ourselves to account on how we address the challenges in a way that is ethical and not creating more problems, more wicked problems in the pursuit of just fixing one.
Wicked problems. It kind of sounds like fun, but it's not really it, right? Wicked problems.
Yeah, it's a fun term, but when you get under the hood of it, it's truly it. Yeah, they're called wicked for a reason.
And just in case anybody else had to double think, DRC is Democratic Republic of Congo, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just double checking that I'm not the only one. And with all the human rights issues and things in there now. On the term, on some of the things you were talking about there. So I have heard rumors, and I don't know if this is true, and this isn't the conversation necessarily today, but once a Tesla is done, it's done. And then it goes into landfill. You can't fix it and things like that. So there's some combinations with these things.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't go into landfill, or it doesn't have to, I would say. It will depend on like the recycling infrastructure, country by country. There is a way of repurposing a lot of the parts of the automobile. I think the battery, it's the battery that's the most difficult point of any electric vehicle. It's not just Tesla. So, but in fairness,
picking the biggest one.
Yeah, no. And I think, without that innovation, without that brand, and without Tesla coming onto the market, we wouldn't have seen the explosion in electric vehicles that we have, because Elon Musk made it sexy, made it desirable, got us through the adoption curve on electric vehicles, because it was seen as something for mass market and not just for the greenies or the eco-conscious consumer. So that was it was a helpful product in the market at the time. And we're now, I hope, at the stage where if we can get the cost of electric vehicles down and the infrastructure in each of our kind of country-based economies to a point where they can utilize them, then they become really valuable. I mean, talking about electric vehicles, there's quite a famous /funny/sad clip from Donald Trump talking about electric army tanks. And we can all have an opinion on Trump. I'm not a fan. Don't take that from this comment, but I'm definitely not a fan. But I thought his point was valid. Why are we investing in electric tanks when ultimately those tanks are going to bomb a country and take lives? And there's a weird rationale in the pursuit of a vehicle that is ultimately, you can argue it's a vehicle of protection, but you can also argue it's a vehicle of destruction. So this is what I mean by that these topics are complex, and again, coming back to, you need collection of voices in the room to influence these things, and you need diverse perspectives in the decision-making process and the value chain of how these products are going to market.
Yeah, and I guess at the moment there is a lot of the same kind of guys that are driving some of these things. I mean, I'm thinking there's the and I think what Musk did was ingenious as well, because he actually appealed to the people who with scarcity as well, who had money, so he could fund it, right, with what he did initially. So whilst I might not be a massive fan, I'm kind of a fan of what he's done. Whilst I'm not a massive fan of the Orange Man, I'm not a big fan of what he's done either, so I'm not going to talk more about him. Although there is another one, and I haven't run this by you, so you can shut it down straight away. But where does nuclear sit in the midst of all the sustainability conversations? Does it come up?
It does, and I have friends that work in nuclear, and perhaps unsurprisingly, when the Ukraine war broke out, there was a lot of discussion about nuclear around that time within sustainability circles. And some of you might know and remember the story of Chernobyl, which is in that region. Yeah, and there's a very good documentary on that I'd encourage all of you to read and educate yourselves around. So what's my view? And talking on nuclear, I think it can serve a useful purpose, so I'm not anti-nuclear, but I do think that responsible utilization of that as a source of energy, as any technology, is critical. And my concern is that without the proper management and controls around these things, they are dangerous. And without kind of international agreements and securities around the utilization of it, perhaps we shouldn't be using it.
No, and I do remember Chernobyl very, very clearly, because I was actually in the UK then, and I had friends who were in Kiev at that time. It's kind of a bit scary. Although there are some very interesting research projects about dogs in Chernobyl at the moment, and how they've evolved and things which is worth.
Oh gosh, well I'll look into that. That's crazy to think of. I mean, my parents' generation here in Europe, we had a lot of people leaving Europe after the Second World War and after Hiroshima and moving to Australia and New Zealand because they thought they were safer. Unfortunately, none of us are safe at this time, just by virtue of what's happening in the world. We've seen it recently, haven't we? So we all have a responsibility, I think, as citizens of the planet. And if any of you that have been tracking the rise of displaced persons, so what I mean by that, things like climate migrants, people that are being displaced, be it from island nations or from things like coastal erosions, flooding, etc. The famous example is what's happening in the Maldives right now, where the government has an actual kind of strategy around moving their entire population, relocating to India, how they're managing that, how they're protecting their culture in that. And then nations that are receiving large influxes of refugees, displaced persons, and how you might treat a skilled migrant versus an unskilled migrant, different ways in which you create incentives for nations from different countries, how we define citizenship, and how our generation engages with that. Our governments have got some really difficult decisions ahead of them in an effort to create, I would hope, more equality and not just protectionism around the people that were there first. It is a difficult time right now.
Well, there's the people who were there first, and then there was the other people who came first to a place, right? So
yeah, and so you mentioned earlier around indigenous groups, and there's interesting debates right now happening in Europe because we have some regulation called ESRS, and I don't want to get the acronym wrong, but there's a there's a part of that regulation in Europe that talks about affected communities, and it uses the word indigenous. And the word indigenous is it's a post-colonial word, and so the debate in Europe around that term indigenous is, well, what does the word indigenous mean in a European context where we were the colonizers? Not proud of that, but what would indigenous communities in Europe look like? Is, does it qualify beyond the Sami race, which is in the Nordics, which I guess would be our equivalent of an Aboriginal race, just to draw a kind of parallel for the Australian audience? Would we include Romani Gypsy in that? Well, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, there's a part of that definition which includes land. Land is a determining factor in that term indigenous, and a Gypsy Romani, by virtue of how they choose to live their life, don't necessarily have land or a homeland. So you tie yourselves in knots with these things, and people aren't always comfortable. The conversation around diversity and equality and community is difficult, and it's divisive, and because of that some people shy away from talking about it. And they're worried about getting it wrong, and I'm just going to tell you now, we will get it wrong, but we need to talk about it. We just have to, and we need to correct one another and educate one another, and it's very important. And I think that women can hold a space to talk about that in a way that is graciously bold and courageous. And I would hope that those of us on this call would be willing to do that.
So yes, we are. I'm going to answer for everybody. There's a couple of questions here. So from Emily, do you think that improvements in some areas of the UN sustainability goals could worsen the situation for others? For example, sustainable living practices can be more expensive than non-sustainable. For example, the cost of purchased hybrid EV is more expensive currently, which could broaden the pay disparity between third world countries, could fall behind in tech advances. That was a long one.
Yes. It's a good question, though. It's a very good question. Okay, so let me respond to that with, in order for the kind of the base level for the global population to rise, those of us with privilege, the top 1%, need to be okay with having less, or using our resources differently.
Yeah.
And that can manifest as, rather than buying 10 things which are fast fashion, I'm going to buy one thing that's a sustainable product that is more ecologically sound, just as an example. From a technology lens, there is the adoption curve, right? Like there's in any new product, there is a adoption curve where first movers on something normally take the bulk of the cost. They get the initial benefit of that, and that could be a feel-good benefit as an ethical consumer because you have solar panels on the roof of your house or a wind turbine or whatever. But in order to reach an economical price point where it then becomes accessible for mass market, there are those that have to move first. And so you can extrapolate that out at a macroeconomic level. There are economists like Kate Raworth, who invented donut economics, that would say our economy needs to shift completely. We need to revisit how we consider value and move beyond just gross domestic product and how much money we have as a determinant of privilege and wealth. Conversations around what it means to thrive, what it means to have a well-being economy, talked about a lot, not just in academic circles but also in political circles. Increasingly you find these conversations happening at COP and at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, which happened last week. And it's tough, but there's also examples where technology helps communities to leapfrog. There is an assumption that the curve is straight, and it's not. There's a very good theory called Bacana Two Loops, which is looking at adoption of a technology product or a systems change is often used for, where there will be those that go through an adoption curve on a piece of technology. And then there's those that, because that curve has happened, they can transition and they can leapfrog across, if you can visualize that. Those that go through the pain of the curve and those that transition across from the top. And the best example of this, to simplify it, would be things like mobile banking in Africa. You don't need to go through having a bank account, etc. You could engage with a product like M-Pesa, and M-Pesa is one of the most kind of famous examples in East Africa of how to create value through mobile banking for both urban and village people in that region. So where that sort of innovation exists, it's a great equalizer. And we need to find more of those.
It is interesting, the whole concept of the mobile phones and things like, although I do see that there's some problems with coverage with some of our African members just going, oh, they didn't connect today. But there was a great project in India, actually, that was called the Slate. It's called the Swasthya Slate, which kind of which means new life, right? But it was it was actually they were able to. It was a solar powered slate, and it was able to take. It was able to diagnose 32 simple, kind of very common sort of diseases or conditions, and they trained ushers who were not necessarily nurses and things like that, but they were basically trained on doing this, and they got paid per person that they actually did. So it had a huge impact on or potentially huge impact. I think it's kind of disappeared somewhere off in the drain now, but I think like just the leapfrogging or the skipping a couple of steps and things, and the ability to do that is kind of very interesting. Yeah. It fills me with hope.
It does, yeah. And if you want to see some good examples of those sorts of technologies that are helping to kind of leapfrog change, there's a global initiative called Social Shifters, and they run an annual competition around sustainability. And there's lots of examples where of how technology is being utilized to affect positive social impact. One of my favorite, it's a fairly new organization, but I encourage you to look at it. It's called equalreach.io, and they are looking at digital nomads, but specifically for refugee populations. So how refugee digital nomads with tech skills can engage with as kind of outsourced service providers with different companies to really not just create sustainable livelihoods for refugees that are kind of heavily mobile across borders, but also ensure that we're using like the raft of technology skills that we have on the market, not just those that are kind of those people that are kind of fixed with a kind of fixed abode and address and nation. So that their work is fascinating, and I'd encourage all of you to just kind of have a look at that post the call.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff going on. So one of the things that we're hoping to do then with It Girls Rock is actually to uplift people from. Oh, there's another one here. Oh, that's the one you put there. That's you. Is really to provide that ability to get that training and on-the-job training, but also the coaching and mentoring there. So there's another question from Kirti. In your opinion, how can research add to the sustainability goal of quality of education, especially for developing nations? We've gone totally off script, but that's all right, right?
No, we welcomed any question. Education's an interesting one. So, I mean, I think the popular view would be that the formal education system is broken. And it's a sweeping statement, quite a bold one from me. But our education system has been designed for people to participate in an economy which has not been fit for purpose. And there's a lot of debate around whether the education system is creating the people to do and not just people to think. And so there's probably a wider conversation to be had about the role of our education systems and how they need to change to develop people who are matrix thinkers, problem solvers, entrepreneurs, etc., and not just workers. And then there's the conversation to be had around sustainability, education itself. And there are examples where we are educating the younger generation well, and the younger generation is then influencing their parents and carers. The simple examples are things like recycling habits, teaching children around climate change, etc. But there's also trends around that where we're creating a sense of eco-anxiety in our younger generation. So we educate them on how bad the situation is, and then we don't empower them to feel a sense of control or voice or change. Now, the companies that are starting to be more progressive in this work are creating things like youth councils or youth boards. Even Extinction Rebellion, which is a big global movement around climate action and climate activism, they have Extinction Rebellion youth to try and give more of an acceleration and a sense of control and impetus on that youth population. We're not doing enough. We definitely aren't. And there's sort of there's an assumption that age equals wisdom. I'm not sure that's true. I'm really not sure that's true. And so trying to figure out and think through, yes, we can do better on educating youth and ourselves around sustainability, but the and education and agency. And what I mean by agency is how and where can those individuals that are enlightened, that understand the problems and have the skills to affect positive change, how do we create pathways for them to feel like they can innovate, engage with the issue, have a voice that is listened to? That is the difficult thing that we need to also focus on.
I think you kind of looked at both, or did you look at both the questions? Because the next question I'll get that Robin, she is an amazing teacher that I know, and has always done design thinking kind of style, inquiry-based training, and is we just had a chat earlier today, so I just happen to know that there's kind of been a shift, and now there's and correct me if I'm wrong, was a direct education, what's it called, instructive direct education, I think it is, that it's basically telling people what to do rather than allowing kids to be
well, so firstly hi Robin. I'm gonna like just cutting away age or constructs of the education system. I would say that we need design thinkers, we need computational thinkers, and we need critical thinkers, irrespective of age, right, on these problems. So how do you instill that? And then we need people who technically understand environmental issues, technologies, and social equity, dialogue and conversation. So there's a psychological development of people that can do computational thinking, design thinking, critical thinking, with compelling active listening skills, etc., all that soft stuff, which is harder sometimes. And then there's people that are educated from a technical perspective to understand the engineering that is required, the mutual gain, dialogue, negotiation skills, etc., etc. And those things need to come together. And it's across all levels of how we educate, both from a primary school level through to further education, which is where you'll probably find me more often than not at a university level with Cambridge. So excellent question, and I wholeheartedly agree that we need to focus down and work on that, Robin.
Yes, we do. And it is quite interesting because there are, and I think we've talked about this before, maybe Beth as well, is that the and maybe we can round off with that because I can see we're getting close to the end here as well. But kind of this, and you've already touched on it slightly, but around this wise women's way, if I can use that term, like how can we as women actually impact this in a positive way? So I think Robin won't mind me saying she's about my age, and suddenly, like, you know, she's not seen as not necessarily seen as that that exciting young teacher, but she's one of the most amazing teachers I've ever seen, and it was so much fun working with her and with the kids. So we were working with migrant kids, with people with English as a second language, and it was brilliant. But and just doing design thinking stuff. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on your view on the women. I mean, I can stay here forever, but I know you've got plenty to do.
I mean, I'd welcome that dialogue, and there probably is another conversation to be had here around age diversity and how women are treated based on age. I'll openly
Both
share
young
that
and older.
both young and old. Yeah, there's probably a sweet spot where we have less bias hitting us, and then a few years fast forward and we're at the opposite. I mean, I'm at that fun age right now where I'm perimenopausal. So that all of that fun of like hot flushes and, like, you know, grey hairs emerging on top of my head and all this jazz. So you know, I can't speak on behalf of all women. I can talk about my own experience, but you know, there's stuff with men as well. You know, I talk to male colleagues, and there's real kind of pressure and mental health issues that men are faced with. It's concerning to see, you know, suicide rates in men at the minute is very high, more so than women. So I don't think it's always fair to say that women have it worse. It's just different.
It's absolutely
and
different.
I think all of this is dialogue, right? There is vested power in this world that centers most typically with men, which makes those conversations around equalizing discussion, input on design, equal pay, etc. And ultimately, the equalizer in this is privilege, and then you layer in the different intersectional kind of parts that make one of us more or less privileged than another. And you're coming down to a very fundamental conversation of, like, we need active listening on one another's lived realities to take account of their, you know, human experience.
It's about seeing everybody and hearing what they're saying and being part of it, whatever you call that. I always thought active listening. I always got told that I wasn't an active listener, but I listened very actively. I just listened very fast. But I think it's about, you know, that old term that used to be said in just, which was, oh, I don't see color, and it was meant to be positive, but it's not positive, right? Because we need to see the unique differences and the unique personality and the unique perspectives and the unique diversity in thought that comes from every person, and the unique intersectional
yeah, I mean, we are a mosaic.
Yeah.
You know, as humanity, we are a mosaic, and you can be, and so having empathy, trying to meet people where they are, trying to use whatever influence, impact, and resources that we have within our gift to affect change, because there's layers of privilege, right? So as the top 1% in the world, by virtue of the fact that we're online right now, have access to the internet, are on LinkedIn, probably all have some disposable income or level of disposable income, means that we have a duty of care to those that do not have that, without getting kind of too woo-woo and left-wing about things. So we have to really just figure out, as each of us as individuals, where our influence is, how we use our skills, where we put ourselves from a professional perspective, and then how we show up for our children, our communities, the people that we have responsibilities around. And that's a journey that we're all on, I think, and it's not something that we're going to ever have completed, because, you know, life is a journey.
It is. Wonderful roundup. Did you want to have any final roundups on that, or are we? was there any takeouts, anything that you want to share, anything you want people to go away and do?
Well, we've shared a lot on the call. Thank you for those that ask questions. Stay connected on LinkedIn. If anybody would like to engage with me after this, I'm open to anybody that would like to direct message me. I mentioned that I teach at the University of Cambridge, so we've got a course that starts on the 7th of February. It's an 8-week course. If anybody would like to jump in and learn all around business sustainability management with me, they'd be very welcome. And I'll share a link with you for follow-up after the discussion. But just thank you for holding this space. Thank you for actively listening. We've used that term a lot on this call. And I hope it's been a valuable use of time for everybody.
I hope so too. And I do want to thank you very much for that. I'm just going to take us off the spotlight now and see who's still here. If I can get you off the spotlight, then you're not coming off. Oh, well, I've just got you then. Let's see. Anybody that wants to know more about It Girls Rock and what we do, we've put some links there. Please do have a look at that. I'm going to put it into the thanks, Beth, into the event on LinkedIn as well. We had a reasonable turnout today. What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't do the maths.
Lots of comments and high fives. I'm enjoying the high fives. This is good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and thank you so much for your time. Beth, we've got 2 more minutes. Do you want to say something? Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think if we've finished on time, then we've done very well. I would just tell people to keep going.
What I would like to ask of people, and I will post this on the all the links and things on the LinkedIn page as well, is to if you're interested in more talks like this, we'll be having some of those. We're aiming to have a keynote like this, fireside chat like this once a quarter. Please join our LinkedIn page and our the It Girls Rock LinkedIn page, but also we've set up a LinkedIn an It Girls Rock global group on Facebook. There are so many different platforms, but I will post all of that on the link, and hopefully to everybody that's there. Haven't quite figured out how to do that on LinkedIn, which is quite sad considering I'm supposed to be a technologist. Social media isn't really technology, though, I said. All right. Well, it's 8 o'clock here. And midday is lunchtime for Beth, and bedtime for me soon, or dinner time. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all around soon. And please connect both with Beth and me online. See you guys.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.